We jump on all of the different places that we want to go live. But if you are starting to pop on and you can see me and you can hear me, please say yes and yes so that we know that our tech is working and our Wi-Fi is strong on this beautiful Wednesday. Maybe Thursday for some. I know we have people tuning in all over. Awesome. Okay, so I believe that we are now live everywhere. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's me, Mandy. We're going into day 2 of our 7-day challenge as we celebrate my book, The Promise. I know so many of you have already purchased copies. You're getting bonuses. I've already been hearing feedback, reading some of my Instagram messages and so forth of what the book is doing. Even my mom called me yesterday and she's like, Mandy, I am already bawling. It's the first chapter. I am just crying. This is so beautiful. So it's been a wonderful start to this incredible launch week. So again, welcome to day 2. Today, we're going to be talking about self-knowledge. It is the second pathway in the promise. And I kind of want to lay down the foundation of what it means for me and then give you guys one tool, and then we'll read a little bit of a blurb from the book. So self-knowledge to me, and this is really where it came from, I had realized that most often us as humans, and you'll hear this in the excerpt that I'll read as well, is that we tend to look at something that is just a circumstance, something that has happened outside of us, and we internalize it and we cause for it to mean something about us. Now, that's a very natural thing that we do, but in most ways, it's debilitating. It causes us to lay it down an identity level, and in some way, we self-flagellate because of it. So for example, one of the things I talk about in the book, remember years ago, I had a tax bill, and this tax bill was much larger than I was anticipating, and it freaked me out. Now, for those of you who know my story, the reason that we did not have a home when I was born and, for a little bit growing up was because of some tax things that happened with my parents. And so I had always been a really big stickler. Every time I paid my taxes, I was owed money, all that stuff. So I made sure that I kind of controlled that. And as I had started my purpose work, and I had multiple businesses outside of that were successful, I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that I was going to owe this much in taxes. So it caused me to panic. And I remember thinking all of these things like, wow, I'm so irresponsible. How did I miss this? And all of this stuff. So something outside of me, go with me on this, something outside of me, like a tax bill, a bill, I internalized, and it meant something about who I was fundamentally. And I have seen people do that over and over and over again. That's something that happens to us that's really helping us heal and grow. Instead, we decide that it means something negative. And so looking at that, and actually what happened, once I was able to kind of expand and utilize the tool that I'm about to give y'all, I was utilizing that and I was able to see, you know what, there might be something missing here. Like if I can at minimum stop making this about myself in a way that doesn't make me feel good, if I can stop self-identifying with this issue, something amazing might be on the other side. And so I ended up doing that, ended up detangling it energetically. And y'all, again, very seemingly a very, this is a 3D thing. You can't change it and so forth. Everything had been miscalculated. I ended up switching accountants and found that it was, there was way more write-offs than originally. And all these beautiful things happened. I know that seems like a really humanistic thing, but I think it's something that we all go through in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's a perfect example here. Yes, I do go through humanistic things, believe it or not. And so that self-knowledge piece, I realized in so many different areas of our lives, when we have something that stimulates a response out of us, it causes for us to judge ourselves or place a meaning that's usually very incorrect about who we are as a person. Again, who we are fundamentally. It's like an identity level. And it's usually a false belief that causes for us to further miss out on the full panorama of what's happening and the beauty of what could be showing up. Because now when I look back at that, I go, because of what happened with my parents, and because it was probably ingrained in me, in almost my DNA, if you will, because my mother was pregnant with me when a lot of this stuff was happening with them, was that it probably ingrained in me in such a way that I was unaware of, but it's why it created such a primal response in me too. And I truly believe that because I was able to see it differently and it dissolved itself, it probably healed something going backwards as well. So even though that kind of response and so forth, and even what showed up seemed like a bad thing, it was there to serve me, and it was actually there to help me heal something. And so I believe when we're looking at manifestation, when we're looking at living the greatest lives that we want, it's not about us mastering things outside of us or using things outside of us to decide who we're going to be in life or whom we are. Instead, it is, how is this showing me more of what I choose to be or what I simply am not? And how can I understand the difference between the two? And instead, who am I as a soul, not just as, a human, if you will, of course, the promise being all about the human and the divine. So I wanted to give you guys a tool that I absolutely love. It's so simple, but we all need it no matter what walk of life, no matter where we are in life. It's so powerful. I just talked about this tool at the theater for those of you who are in Los Angeles a few days ago as well. And it is this. It's an acronym, so I'll say it slow. STRO. STRO. Now let's break this down. S stands for stimuli. I feel like Miss Rachel. S is for stimuli. Da, da, da. So S stands for stimuli. It's just something that occurred. Maybe someone didn't unload the dishwasher. Your boss yelled at you. Somebody honked at you when you were driving because they're having a bad, whatever it may be. It's just something that occurred. Maybe someone's about to sneeze or whatever. They give a weird face. But then you place a meaning on it and you get triggered. Now that's the magic of it. It's just stimuli. It's just something that happened until you place a meaning on it and then you are triggered. And that's really the magic of STRO is right there. There is a space in between what happens and your emotional response. That is up to you. That's your responsibility. But most often it is a knee-jerk reaction. Somebody, flips you off or honks at you or something. You maybe go right into anger. Maybe you go into fear. Maybe we all have different reactions to it. We all get triggered for different reasons because we're all telling ourselves something different. Now, some of us, of course, might say the same thing, but isn't it interesting that we can have one stimuli, one thing, but we can all have different reactions to it because of how we get triggered. And that's the R in STRO. So we're going from stimuli, what we tell ourselves, to trigger, that's the T. And because of that trigger, it produces a reaction, R reaction. So the reaction is different for everybody. Again, some may shy away, some may yell back, some may fight, some may flee, some may based on that trigger. And most importantly, that reaction decides the outcome. Now, let's think about this simplistically. Let's just say that you get into a fight with your partner and you're really frustrated. What do you normally do? That doesn't work, mind you. Let's just say that normally you storm off and you avoid, or you explode and you yell, and then it causes more disconnection, which ultimately isn't what we want as humans. One of our most basic needs is connection to others. So even though in some way we want to disconnect out of fear, we don't truly want that in our soulful needs, right? That causes more pain. It causes more issues. It could even cause the relationship to end if we let it go too far. And so let's just say that that's the case. And instead, that particular day that you get into a fight, instead of fighting, you stop and you go, even though this feels weird and it almost feels like awkward for a second, we're going to hug it out. We can fight after, but let's just hug for a moment. Or let's just stop and hold hands. Or let's take 10 deep breaths together. Or let's talk about a memory really fast that was like one of our greatest times in life. And what we're doing is we're dissipating all that emotional stuff that's kind of building up in us so that, one, we don't cause that same reaction, but then of course it's changing the outcome as well. So instead of blowing up and causing more disconnection, which would be the outcome, and the outcome could eventually become, not being together anymore, or just more issues, or all of the things you can imagine that happen with a disconnection in a relationship, you're bringing in connection. What can that create? That could create maybe the reality of, maybe we really are ready for marriage, and you end up getting married if you're not already, or just an incredible connection and a feeling of safety that you didn't have maybe ever in relationships. But in some way, it brings you good things. But look at that, all of those steps that we just went through, that stimuli, whatever caused the fight, whatever caused the stress, whatever you are blaming it on, there's actually a space in between. And that meaning that you place is what deciphers the trigger, because the trigger is based on what you tell yourself. Because some things can happen, like someone can flip me off and it won't bother me unless I think I did something wrong, or, I might be telling myself something about it. But there's absolutely people who can go through things that would trigger someone to no end, and someone else, it's just like water off a duck's back. They don't even feel it, doesn't bother them whatsoever. Why is that? Because we're all wired differently, right? But the things that can provoke an emotional response from you, the things that can trigger you, hold unbelievable power over your life. And so I know for myself, at least, if something has massive power over me, I want to understand it. I want to make friends with it. I want to heal it. I want it to not happen if that's the case, if it's not serving me in my life. And ultimately, STRO allows for us to slow down that entire emotional response, see if there's different reactions, different meanings that we can place on it, so that we can ultimately change the outcome. So the one tool that I would like to give you now is, next time that you find yourself triggered, or you're telling yourself something that just isn't serving you in the highest good, but it feels really real, and it could be, as real. I'm not here to tell you it's not, but there may be another perspective available to you that you've forgotten about, if you will, is bring up STRO and write it out. Write out S. What was the stimuli? And then write out trigger. What did you tell yourself? Why are you having an emotional response? And then R, maybe you're already looking backwards. So you're like, well, I already reacted. So here was my reaction. Or if you haven't reacted yet, you can say the next time this happens, because it tends to happen a lot, this is going to be my new reaction. And it's a higher reaction. It's higher vibratory. It feels better. And then write out the outcome again, whether it either happened or wait and see. And then write what did happen, because you changed that reaction. Y'all, I cannot say enough. Do not underestimate the power of STRO. The reason that we don't have what we want in life and we ride the roller coaster of emotions and experiences is because we let emotions run us instead of us being empowered to choose the emotions that run through us, or to see the ones that show up as feedback and information to what's going on inside of us that's actually there to help us and to heal us. Okay, so before I let y'all go, I wanted to share an excerpt from the book. This is from chapter 2, Self-Knowledge. All right, let's rock. One of the biggest problems I see in the world is the tendency to make every problem mean something about ourselves, which leads to generating a false identity that keeps us from bravely embracing who we really are. The second pathway of light, self-knowledge, helps you to discover the freedom that comes from a very simple realization. It's not all about you. Part of the human experience of suffering is that we find it difficult to accept when something bad is happening. Instead, we internalize it to mean that something is wrong with us. We create negative interpretations that place ourselves at the center rather than simply responding to any situation, bad or good, with our wholehearted presence and awareness. We end up building an entire identity around our perceived sense of inadequacy. It's only when we stop making our challenges mean something negative about us that we produce the emotional frequency of empowerment, which is everything I'm all about, which can only happen with the self-knowledge that we are infinite divine beings having a finite human experience. With that, we are able to recognize that as infinite beings, we can actually do something about the situation. And even if the outcome isn't perfect, we can honor ourselves for having done our best. As humans, there are human matters we must deal with, and self-knowledge can keep us from sinking in the garbage of limiting stories. It can also help us face the world with an open heart that is not stuck in false beliefs about who we are and what we're capable. The opposite of self-knowledge tends to look like an inflated or deflated ego. When we over-identify with certain situations in our lives, either good or bad, quote unquote, according to our perception, we are mistaking the things that have happened to us for who we fundamentally are. We tend to define ourselves using the human story, which can lead us to unconsciously relate every negative experience to some kind of personal shortcoming or flaw in our basic way of being. When we do this, it triggers a signal to our unconscious mind that says something like, oh, here I go again, being my usual irresponsible, spacey, oversensitive, weird, angry, fill in the blank with your chosen form of self-judgment, self again. This doesn't do us any favors, as it usually ends up magnetizing more experiences that cause us to draw similar conclusions about ourselves. What's worse, we turn them into an identity. Our self-judgment can also lead to anxiety and even depression. What will benefit us most is to turn our self-judgment to self-awareness, which is what leads to self-knowledge. With so much energy focused on ourselves, it's easier to use that observation for productive outcomes instead of continuing the cycle of self-sabotage. So that's just a quick excerpt from chapter 2, self-knowledge. All right, that concludes our day 2. I feel like STRO is so juicy and there's so much to it. So use this time today to figure out how you can detangle something that's occurred, something that has triggered you, something that just isn't sitting right with you, and STRO yourself. Stimuli, the trigger or the thought that comes up, the reaction, and the outcome. And in case no one has told you today, I love you. I hope that you will grab a copy of the book. There are amazing bonuses to it. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 3 of our 7-day challenge.